Hello and welcome to another D&December tale, where I tell one of my many stories from my years of playing Dungeons & Dragons. When you make a new D&D character, how much useless crap do you buy? There's plenty of it within the player's handbooks, including some of the more infamous ones like the 10-foot pole, rope, a sack, although arguably all those have uses. So if you buy a bunch of useless crap, how much of it do you actually get to use? I had one player use all of it. This story comes from the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. This wasn't part of an ongoing campaign by any means, but rather it was a single one-shot that I was doing for a group of my friends. The story was, I think it was just a pre-made module or maybe something I made up along the way. I'm not even entirely sure anymore. But the plot was they had to go into a lair or a dungeon or a cave or something to that extent. The exact details aren't important. And there's one guy there who's basically creating diabolical machines. Think tinkered, automated robots or like giant tank-like things, and they're coming out of nowhere and they're wreaking havoc. And it was set to my group of players. I was the dungeon master, obviously. It was set, my group of players had to go and stop them. So before they go out, they made sure to stock up on equipment. You know, they bought the normal things, a grappling hook, some rope, rations. And I had that one player who had to make sure he bought just anything he could. He didn't really care, just a one-shot, he was buying whatever he could. So he bought like chalk, sealing wax, a pot, a little flask of acid, thunderstones, just whatever he could get his hands on. He's just like, I want all of this, and I'm gonna have all of it and just carry it with me on my adventure. And that he did. He never really got to use a whole lot of it until a very specific moment within this adventure. So they managed to make their way into this dungeon. They were in this lair or whatever, and they're actually being quite stealthy. They took out a few guards, did a few fights, and they're sneaking around. And it turns out down within this dungeon or lair or what have you, was basically enslaved gnomes. And that would explain how the automated machines came about, because it was thanks to gnomish technology that these things existed. Now, the gnomes were slaves, but they weren't actually aware that they were being used or enslaved by this mastermind. So to them, they thought they were doing something good and just helping out, and their boss was an A-okay guy. So the group goes in and fight their way through. They're sneaking around, they're trying not to get caught, and they happen to find some of these gnomes. And they actually talked to them. They used diplomacy. They spoke to them. They actually used charisma checks and bluffs and whatever to actually help get information from these gnomes. And they actually did learn quite a bit. And they were located down a hallway into a single room. I don't entirely remember what was in this room. If I had to guess, it was probably some sort of storage room or a supply room, whatever, where they found a few of these gnomes. So they were basically at a dead end, and there's only one way in, one way out at the end of a long hallway. And they were in there, and they had some gnome friends. And talking to them, they managed to convince one of these gnomes to be like, hey, why don't you should go tell your master that we're here for him and we want to meet him. And the gnome's like, oh yeah, why do you want to do that? That's my gnome voice, I guess. And they said, oh, well, because we're actually here from whatever town, and we're envoys from whatever king. We have a very, very important message for him. And it's this piece of parchment. And it just so happens he had one of those, one of the map cases. And he opened it up and took out, was basically a map, but it had a nice seal on it. He pretended it was a super important message for this mastermind, but because he had it in a map case and he opened up and took it out of that improved his bluff check to the gnome. So they got a bonus for using this extra crap that he had. And the gnome was like, oh wow, that looks super official. Okay, sure, I'll go and tell my master and he'll be right back. And off he goes. So the party has decided at this point that when that gnome comes back with that mastermind, they're gonna kill him. Like, they're gonna fight. They're gonna take him out and instantly destroy him. The one party member that I had, who bought all kinds of crap, said to the rest of the party, well, hold on a minute, what if we lay, like, the ultimate trap for him? The ultimate trap for him? What do you mean? Well, and he throws down his sack or backpack, whatever it was he had, and just opens it up and sees all the stuff that he has, and basically just looks at his character sheet, and every single normally worthless item that he bought, he was gonna find a use for. And that's exactly what they did. None of their party was a rogue, by the way. None of them were a thief, so they didn't actually know how to make, like, legit traps. They're just going to throw stuff at him as soon as this man returns. So they came up with the ultimate plan to try to screw this dude up. So reaching into this bag, it first pulls out a fishing net. Well, we're not going to be catching any fish with it, but we can take this fishing net and throw it at him and hit him get caught underneath the net. That way he's all confused and he can't move his hands really well. He's just caught underneath this net. And the other person says, like, well, it's just a net. He can get out of that. He's like, oh, you're right. We should probably weigh the net down with stuff. So he's looking through. He's got possible things like he can weigh it down with locks. He's got some chains he could lay it down. Or what if he weighs down this fishing net using tanglefoot bags? Tanglefoot bags, when thrown, are basically explode into, like, goop that entangle whatever person there is and make it so they can't move. Aha, brilliant. So now we got this fishing net weighed down by multiple tanglefoot bags. There's like 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly how many. So when it lands, not only is he netted, but his legs are gooped. Perfect. That's the best way to start. That's what they decided. It's like, okay, what else can we do to mess him up? And they're saying like, oh, I could shoot him with arrows, or I could shoot a spell at him. I was like, oh, I could stab him with swords. Like, no, hold on. We can do this before he can even action and just go into combat. So other things he had and wanted to use, they position themselves around a room so that they're all within throwing distance or can quickly get up into melee range of this small entrance into this room. So their plan was, okay, throw the net. He also reaches and gets some wax, just regular old wax, and he quickly melts that wax down and keeps it in, he had some kind of container, I forgot what it was, but he melts it down and has it just ready. The idea with that wax is as soon as he walks in, he's under the net, then we're gonna take that wax and just put it right in his eyes. Or no, it wasn't his eyes, his mouth. Right in his mouth. So as soon as he screams, they put that over his mouth. Or down his throat or whatever, just do that. At the same time, he also had some chalk. Chalk you can normally use to, like, mark traps or whatever while you're in a dungeon, or put directions for yourself on the ground in case you get lost. But no, they took this chalk, broke it in half, and started grinding it up as much as possible until we had just a really fine chalk dust, and another player held on to that. So okay, so he's got this chalk dust, and he'll be around this spot. So when he walks in, you can use that chalk dust. They also had it so by the time he walks in, to make sure he's in position for this net weighed down by tanglefoot bags, they had caltrops right there. So he walks in, steps on caltrops, and ow, my foot! He'll take some damage, it'll reduce his movement, but more importantly, he'll be hurt and dazed and stunned, and that's what we use to spring our trap. It's like, okay, that's pretty good. Is that enough? Nope, not quite enough. I've also got, he also has this flask of oil, or not oil, I'm sorry, acid. He's like, well, we want to throw acid on it, but we're running out of people to throw at it. Got a better idea. Like a classic April Fool's prank, they opened up the door in such a way that they had the pot they had a pot, like just a normal cooking pot, and they had a pot up on top of that door, between like the top of the door and the frame or whatever it was, and they put that flask of acid right inside. So that this one, when he walks in, one of the party members with a 10-foot pole can knock it over and had the pot land on one, and then also had the flask of acid just shatter and pour acid on him. And then they also had just a flask of oil that they could throw, have the oil hit all over them, and then immediately start them on fire. They I can't remember exactly what they did. They either threw like a tinder twig, which is basically a match at them, just set them on fire that way, or they had a wizard or sorcerer there that lit the oil with either a fire spell, a prestidigitation, or something to that effect. They found some way to light him on fire, basically. And the final thing to this trap that they set up was the door itself. The guy with all this stuff who came up with this brilliant plan had one more idea. He took his long sword and gave it to the strongest fighter they had and just shoved it through the door. So that the door was open and there was just a sword sticking through it. So that after all this was done, they could just slam the door on them. So not only would the door hit their target, that sword would also go into them. That was their ultimate plan. It took them like 45 minutes to put all of this together. And as a dungeon master, I'm just sitting there going, so you're gonna do what? Okay, right. And then you're gonna put wax down his mouth. Okay, got it. And really trying to figure out how all this is going on. And they did it. That was their plan. And they said to me, so the moment someone walks through that door, we do all of these things. And I said, wow. All right. So a few minutes go by as they wait for their prey. And sure enough, the very moment he walks through that door, boom, that trap is sprung right away. They or he steps on the caltrops right away. He's like, ow, what the hell? My feet hurt. Then the net is thrown and it lands on him. He's confused and the tanglefoot bags go out and oh no, oh, his legs are stuck. He's like, ow, my feet. Now he can't move and get off the tanglefoot bags. And then out of nowhere, someone runs up with that chalk. Remember that chalk? Shoves it in his eyes. Now he's got chalk in his eyes and he's like, he can't move. He's under a net and he's just going, ah! And he's screaming because he screams. Other person runs up with that hot wax, shoves it over his mouth. So now he can't see, he can't move. He's got wax over his mouth, just going, they tip over the acid flask, which had the pot on it first. So first it was boom, and then it was acid shatters, and again, still can't see, can't move. And then they set him on fire, so now he's ablaze this entire time, can't move, and all that, and they slam that door, and slam the door, just sheet blade right through him. And they open up the door, pull the sword out, and thump. Right there, trapped underneath all this stuff, was the burning, dead body of the gnome they sent to go get help. And that was me using their own words against them, because they said the moment someone walks through that door, we do all of these things. And I said, you got it. And that's exactly what they did. So thankfully, they still had a nice boss fight with this mastermind afterwards, but I'll give them credit where credit's due. They got to use all that weird stuff.